You ever look back on your life and you think, if only other people knew what I went through, if only they saw what I had to go through to get to where I am. Well, if you're here, chances are you felt the same way. Getting to know me, getting to know my story. And when I'm reflecting upon this, I want it to come from this place of the embodiment of the feeling that was present at that time. And I think that's actually the hardest part for most of us to do. But when somebody speaks from the emotion, it stops us in our tracks. The resonance goes through our body because we can feel that that is with authority and not just words that sound good. Because if we're the words that sound good, we're usually distracting from a very painful moment that we don't actually want to portray. Now, I want to begin with I was a swimmer. I don't know if you ever say was and for anything, right? You still are, but it's also weird that we have these chapters in our life. And it's not something I ever wanted to do or identify with. Like I did and I didn't. My dad was a swimmer just for high school, but I tried other sports and it just wasn't for me. I wasn't taught well. I wasn't taught confidence. And my shame of potentially getting something wrong, looking back, it caused me to do things wrong. So getting into swimming, I was naturally a pretty good swimmer, but yet I didn't want to be at practice every single day. And that's what it takes to be a swimmer. I remember having fun at first and then becoming avoidant, honestly, especially because I was one of the coach's kids, his only kid. I was in my father's age group for a very short time just to learn how to do a flip turn. And then I moved up because my speed kept me up with the other kids of the next age group. Now, again, I had a great time with the other kids and one of my best friends came out of that. We also had a great time on relays. I loved that the most. I loved still proving little things wrong because it was like the one place that I could do that in my own way. And it's just something that's actually hitting me right now as I'm sharing this. You know, I would get in trouble for not showing my answers on tests. It's like, well, what's the point of having some type of smarts to be able to figure this out because my brain just worked in a different way. But then I would get punished for the right answer, but yet not showing the work to get to the right answer. No one ever taught me it was about the process itself, the process of learning, because we're judged by the result. So it's like if we're judged by the result to pass the test, to get a good grade, to not be punished at home, which was another side tangent that I'm not going to go on today, I could express myself when I was swimming by swimming in my own way. I remember a time where I didn't like using fins, but everybody else was, the practice itself, the set was calling for fins from the coach. I didn't want to. I remember dramatically finishing and beating somebody else with fins and being like, see, you do not need fins to go fast. And this girl was like, he's yelling at me again. It's like, I'm not yelling at you. I'm just yelling because I'm excited to prove my point. And when I got into different places and positions with different coaches, as teams moved, as I moved around, and I couldn't express myself. That's when I feel like I was avoiding practices. I would come up with excuses. I started having, other friends sometimes because I was definitely not a social child that were outside of swimming. So it would be like an excuse to make sure I could go hang out with them instead of go to practice because it was practice every day. And then I remember a little bit later, I'd show up to practice and I'd be like, oh, I forgot my suit, even though it's like in my bag. And they're like, oh, you're going to get in the shorts you have on. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. They're like, no, but you're getting into practice. So I had to be like, oh, I found my suit. Shame. But I start with all that to say, 15 years of it, I obviously had some type of love for swimming, but it was really like the love of being able to express and do well and be goofy. And it was one of the places that I feel like I could. And so that also instilled some level of discipline. And not that I was really excited by it, because I definitely overslept often. you don't get to be a kid. I was 13 or 12, 13, 14, 15, like all high school, 16, 17 especially. Practice was at 5 a.m. So I'd get up from my place at 4:15 to pack my bag, eat a little something, and it was about 15, 20-minute drive. And then I obviously had to change and get into the pool. And then I had to go straight to school afterwards. So I had to pack all my school stuff as well for the day. But it was competing that I got to really enjoy. And I was like, again, I was fast. I was good at it. And the high school I went to, other stories, I'm like, where do I want to go with this? The question, because I really want to go into questions. And 5 minutes in, and here's the first question of really what I'm trying to answer throughout this, because that's what I really want to do is when I ask myself, what do I want to share on a video? What started a specific type of pattern for me, what made parts of what made me who I am, but where did I begin with that? Where did I begin for athleticism and things that I can remember? What was that pressure to be a swimmer from my father? And thankfully I found part of it my own way, because in high school, he wasn't around. It was just my mom's stepdad family. And being the one who didn't really fit in at the private Catholic school I went to, but I had to swim for a different school because we didn't have a swim team. So you had to swim for the school in where you lived. And so those became my friends. To get to be myself with those friends was, the first time I really got to express that in a deeper way, I believe. I had that with one best friend from the original swim team, but really in a group dynamic, I got to be me. And being out of high school as a guy swimmer, it's really tough. You have to basically make Olympic trials to get a Division I offer of any kind. In high school, you have to make Olympic trials. It's a different standard for females because of Title IX. And quick thing about Title IX is that if a male football team takes up 53 positions and there's not a female football team, obviously, Title IX is there's an equal number of opportunities. So if there's a football team, which almost every school has, there's 53 positions that they need to make up with more women's sports. So swimming only takes up 20. Volleyball only takes up, 16, I think, or something like that. Oh, soccer, that's another one. That's another maybe 10 to 15, somewhere in there. So just those three sports alone still don't make up the number of positions of scholarships for females as that one football team. So guys' swim teams get cut often because they don't make money. But that means since there's way less opportunities, you have to be faster. Well, I didn't have that. I went to school at New Mexico State after a buddy of mine who's a year older on that high school swim team area that I was swimming for. He went down there because a coach of his was going there to coach a club team. And there was a chance they were going to get back a guys' swim team. I didn't, but I got in-state tuition there. And since I was also the first one from my mom and dad's side to go to a university right after high school, it was like, and I had to pay for it myself, but it's cheap. It's actually cheaper than Washington State to go to New Mexico. Duh. So I got there, and that's when I got actually a bit faster. And it wasn't because I was actually competing with other college age guys. It was just, different place, different time. It was also maybe it was because of the partying, too much drinking, getting high all the time. Yeah. Again, like random tangents, but drinking too much and then coming back and smoking and then getting the spins and eventually led to, well, we better smoke before we go out and drink. Well, if we did that, that was better. So we didn't get the spins and we would feel better, but we would end up sometimes, and then more often than not later on, we would just get so high we wouldn't go out. So it became much more of a stoner than a drinker. But I got fast then. And I was also around influences that were not healthy, but still pushed me in swimming, which was good. 2009, 2 years after I graduated, 2008 is when I broke my hip on a motorcycle, because every 18-year-old should have a motorcycle. And the shame of fucking up on a motorcycle like that was something I still carry, because my labrum in my right hip is still torn, and it causes my right foot and ankle problems as well. And so as long as I'm working out, as long as I'm moving my body, it does pretty well. But that's like, I can even feel it right now. That's like a deep-rooted shame that's like still part of me. It still comes up. So I broke my hip, wanted to also be seen as superhuman because you're 19. I'm 19 at the time, and barely used the crutches, started swimming. I was already competing in a swim meet when I was still supposed to still be on crutches. So no wonder it still causes problems. And it's like that deep-rooted shame of like all the things I was trying to hide, my own insecurity of the fuck up. Like, not many people knew and know about the accident and like the truth about the accident. And since these are like the truth experiments, it's like, I know one of the questions and goals of all of these is to share these truths, which is I was drinking and I was not planning to be on the motorcycle, but I had to get home to go to work as a delivery boy. So obviously shouldn't have been drinking at all, period. And I was also 19. So there's a few things wrong with this, but it's definitely not part of the plan. I was pretty responsible in that thing overall. And when they tested it, I was 0.08. If I was 21, that would have been legal limit. It's completely fine. But since I was 19 and did bodily harm, that was an aggravated DUI. Ironically, because I actually kind of have a distant swimmer stroke and like, you don't have to know much about swimming to know that there's just like in running, like there's long distance running and there's short distance. Well, shorter distance swimming is like you stay kind of flat. You stay flat. Longer distance, you start rotating more and more. So you get that long stroke that you see. But because it hurt to rotate on my hip after I broke it, I got better at sprinting, even though I was already like a really good sprinter. Because some coaches wanted me to be more middle distance, and I just hated that. I got good at distance for a while, but it's just so boring. Like, I don't want to swim for 15 minutes to drop 2 seconds. I want to swim for 45 seconds and drop 0.2 seconds. That's way more fun to me. So that's right after that is when I made US Open 2009, competed there, thought I was going to get to go somewhere cool. And it was actually back in my home pool in Washington State. It's just how things roll. But the competition part was always there. And at the various swim meets where I did get faster, like I remember I was seated first in one race and my dad was in town. And this wasn't there in college, but it was just like these little moments that I'm remembering right now I think I was seated first as well when I made US Open in the original race. Like you go prelims in the morning, finals at night. I think I was seated first going into finals at night and I ended up getting second, I believe. Actually, I think that one was third, but the other one I got second. The one where my dad was there. And I don't know if there's like the full truth to this, but I remember my stepdad being upset after this when it was like late high school. Before I came out of the locker room, they were talking and my dad said to my mom and stepdad that I'll always be a second place swimmer. Yeah, seeing my stepdad upset about that and wanting to defend that and he said he wanted to deck my dad right there, which like, thank you and thank him for. You don't realize those subtle imprints that those things make, that of course you want to make people happy. And that already underneath it, that at some point I'm in one of my own healing journeys and sessions about, the work that I do now to help people pleasers and perfectionists learn how to say no and set boundaries and take care of themselves first. Because it was sometime around 8 that I saw everybody else being hurt and realized, well, nobody can take and hold space for me and my emotions, so I got to hold it for them. That was my unconscious decision, and it's come up in backtracking this through somatics and parts work and like the type of stuff that I do. And instead of calling those, like that moment to age 8, a trauma, I call these imprints. And like, if you call it whatever, the name doesn't necessarily matter as much, but I just think there's so much baggage with the word trauma. So I call them imprints because imprints, I put them into 3 categories. There's the imprint that can make a big imprint inside of stone. And that's the one like from age 8, where my response was to sacrifice my own peace to make sure everybody else was happy. To make sure nothing I do is a burden because it seemed like they couldn't even handle their own emotions. Sacrifice myself to make sure other people are at peace. So that's one that's carved in stone and just takes a long time once you even realize where it came from to fill in and let dry. And like, it's still always going to be there and seen as a scar. Other moments, maybe even imprint on that, like that comment about being a second place swimmer. It feels like it was like just a deeper dig into that imprint in stone. Or there's the intense relationships we go through. Maybe it's 18 months long and it takes you 6 months to heal. Those are ones that are like a big scrape in sand. Well, I mean, when the tide comes back in, it just washes it away. Maybe you might even still see a little bit of it, depending on how big of a hole that was. But overall, with effort, you could fill it in with sand. And when the tide comes, washes it away. The little imprints of us getting mad daily are like wind on water. Makes an imprint, makes a ripple. The wind can get intense, and then it's gone the next day. Guarantee you no storm lasts for more than like a week, maybe at sea. So these moments in time I let define me unconsciously. So I ended up getting second place when I qualified for US Open. When I went to US Open, you have to really move up. I ended up getting the same time. So that was to be expected because it was very close. Like it's very hard to time these things like, oh, 2 weeks later, you have to also race again and get faster. That's to be expected. But what really sucked was I didn't get faster than that. 3 years later in 2012, I missed Olympic trials, which was the same time standard I had made for the 2009 US Open. I missed it by 0.01 seconds. I mean, that's like the fingernail. And it was 2 weeks later. Actually, sorry, it was right after that swim meet that I quit. Some other circumstances that I'll also share as part of this journey at a different time that also twisted my hand to leave New Mexico State after 5 years there. And that last year I hadn't been going to college there. And I moved to San Antonio where my dad was. And so I quit swimming. But that last year I also found CrossFit. And CrossFit was the new competition for me. Something I was naturally kind of good at, but I didn't have my feet underneath me on dry land. So it took a while, but I had heard about the muscle up. This is actually my fun CrossFit story. I had heard about the muscle up and said, why aren't swimmers doing that? Like, that's a swimming movement. So I joined and started that CrossFit gym in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And first time I walked in there to just do a workout with them, I did one on the rings and they were like, you're in. I couldn't do one again for a few months. It was just beginner's luck. Please don't kill me. But I just remember, I didn't think too much about it. It was just kind of a natural progression of, well, this workout makes way more sense. It's another way to compete. It's another thing that I could just jump into versus like lifting in the gym was like my body kind of hurt doing it because you're also just not taught right. And it's not like CrossFit coaches are also the best, but like your body does get more efficient by just doing something. So I did that for the last year in Las Cruces, moved to San Antonio, reached out to a few CrossFit gyms, joined one, and then worked my way up to wanting to coach there. Wasn't in a good position or spot. So was opening up one with a friend in San Antonio. He was a member there and we decided to branch off and start our own. And that could be that's maybe the whole next episode as I build on these, is the journey that happened there. Because I was just getting a job as serving on the side. I started coaching CrossFit because I went through level 1, 6 months before that for coaching. Always had a knack for technique and thought about swim coaching. That was always kind of the thing. But as soon as CrossFit came along, it just changed my world. And I don't think I've also given it as much credit and as an impact on my life. That I did steer away from almost people pleasing and perfectionism in that. But, of course, it's like if I'm perfect with some of the movements, I also get attention there. Versus in the gym, you're just like, no one gives you attention for it. But in the group setting, you nail a lift, you get the muscle up, you get the attention. And all I wanted was to make other people happy. It was never actually for me. These are hard truths to actually spend time and think about and feel, to feel the embodiment of how much of my life I wasn't actually choosing for me. And then it's still a problem to this day. I also have not even spent time ever. And I can't tell sometimes our greatest gift is our greatest curse. I didn't spend time thinking about my 15 years of swimming for 50 weeks a year. You get 2 weeks off at most. Winter break is like hell week for 2 weeks. Summertime, you're competing all the time. You get 2 weeks off in August. That's it. So 15 years straight that I just missed Olympic trials in 2012, stopped, moved to San Antonio, started CrossFit, and just kept going. So certain elements that are fascinating to look and say, like I didn't do that for anybody else. It's like those certain intuitions that you just know are for you. And like I can look back and honestly say those are for me, but I didn't celebrate that enough. The energy and the effort and the time that took to make it to US Open and barely miss Olympic trials for the US team. And honestly, I think I wish someone else had taught me sooner how to fall in love with it because I would have stayed with it to actually push more. But the situation just got me out of it and I needed to just go to the next thing because I was pretending like it was something that really mattered. And it's like, I didn't actually ever care that much. I cared about like looking good and being a badass and getting attention because I didn't get attention as much from my father. And I mean, I got it from family. But as all families do, it's not ill-intentioned. They don't give it the way you need. And that's what parts work and somatics has done is unlocked that to say, what did I actually need? And I forgive all of the things that happened because of course, like That wasn't ill-intentioned. They didn't mean to, but they didn't give me what I needed because I didn't know what I needed. Because I became numb. I numbed it out from that. Really, I felt like from age 8 forward. So I didn't feel like I was getting the right praise for what I needed. It was like, oh, you can do whatever you want, or you just have all this talent there and you're just wasting it if you don't go push it. It's like, that's not what I need to hear. That didn't help. That made me just want to be more rebellious. CrossFit allowed me to be in a performance state that got attention that I was wanting and needing. And then I was also a good coach, and it was a good coach at something that was different than everybody else that I knew in swimming, and like my own dad is of doing that. And because I had that inner rebellion, inner rebel that wanted to be different. So I knew that needed to change, and I just trusted that. And that kind of sparks starting that CrossFit gym with a friend. And unfortunately, he was a prescription drug addict at the time, and I didn't know the level of depth in that. So I started seeing some as we were building. I think we got up to like 80 members in this small place. Actually, it was his garage. 80 paying members in his garage. And I was always showing up to coach like the 5:15 or something. I would have to like sometimes pound on the door to get him to open it because I didn't even have a garage code with members out there for class. Because I again can look back and say I was looking for a male approval, someone to give me that guidance that I wish I had. Again, I didn't even know what it needed to look like, but I just knew I needed it somehow. So all these older male influences, I just wanted to be great. So I pushed, sacrificed to make sure that it was successful for everybody else. Like, yeah, it's for me, but it was for me in a different way. It was for me in this kind of undertone of selfishness, which I can only look back on and see now of like, but I wanted it for that validation. And that's what perfectionism and people pleasing is. It's like that. It's kind of a subtle form of manipulation because we're doing it so that other people will like us more. And we don't mean it like that, but it's just how it can be seen. Because for me, it puts that into perspective to say, oh, that's really what it is. Instead of trusting people to say, I trust you to hold your own emotions and that anything that's wrong is not my responsibility. I got to learn what my responsibility is. Because right now I'm trying to manipulate the situation to make it seem like it's my fault or it's my responsibility to do something for you. And when you do and you feel better or proud or happy, oh, I did that too. So I get that validation. Man. So as I start this and maybe 25 minutes into the first one of, I don't know how many, the beginning of my story that I want to cut up into clips and use, but even if no one watched this, what I hope happens is physically, spiritually, emotionally, I get this story out there. And that even if one person watches that makes an impact and like it gets to be seen and that you're not alone, that we all, like the first part of this is like we all had shit that we went through. Because there's other parts throughout that beginning part, the beginning story that I didn't even go into of, trying to run away from where my dad's place is and getting picked up by my mom. And also seeing that like on the other side, the mom side of the family is not perfect. No family is. So please, it's nothing to do about making fun or saying it was anybody's fault, but just watching her and her sister actually physically fight. Seeing men and women on both sides, like my mom's dating with other men, my dad dating with women, and the pain and manipulation that was taking place on both sides for everybody. And just me being like, well, nobody can hold space. I'm not going to be a burden. I'm going to hold that in. So I hope that by my experiment, which is why it's for me called the truth experiment, is to continue to get deeper into these truths and unshame them. And that maybe it makes an impact for someone else. Maybe someone resonates with it. But most importantly for me is that it's for me to get those truths out there because I believe that when we speak the truth into the world with precision in our word, we make the world a better place. That we are striving upwards to some higher aim. And whether you're atheistic, agnostic, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, doesn't matter. What I have seen is when we speak the truth out loud and people using our words and then people can feel it, see it, resonate with it, everybody gets better. But I'm doing this for me to get better. This is what I need to do. So my hope with this is that I'm a different person looking back in 30 days, doing this leading up to my birthday. 36, 30 days from now. Because I'm done playing small. I'm done letting anything else but the truth be shared And if these things are still being held in my body, which is what I believe is when they are held in, they're not said, even if I've kind of processed them, when they're not said out loud, that is what causes pain and tension and heaviness in the body. So I'm doing this for me to be more free. And maybe it's somewhere along the way, somebody else does the same in their life, or these stories resonate and give people permission to start unwinding and figuring out where their pains and patterns come from. That's part one. Tori's story. If you're one person, two, three, if you're one person who listened to this and it made an impact, please share. I'm here to help people undo these patterns, these deep-rooted people-pleasing perfectionist patterns that have caused them to reach burnout, have caused them to not know their worth, their value in relationships, in financial decisions, in work, getting that promotion. I'm here to tell you that you are worthy of resting, that you are worthy of saying no. And it starts with loving you. So I love you, you beautiful human. I'll see you next time on the Truth Experiment Daily Talks.